Oh, time is strange. Hello, everybody, and welcome to What the Trans.
Yes, What the Trans.
Yeah, it is me, Flint, here with
me, Ashleigh.
So how have you been?
I'm good. It's been a lot recently, hasn't it? Like news-wise, which obviously we'll get into. But yeah, I've been doing all right. I had like a bunch of stuff that I thought, I'll mention that and I'll mention that, and I can't remember what any of it is.
Oh, big same.
Yeah. Like, we do actually have lives outside of the podcast. This isn't the entirety of what we are, and indeed who we are and what we do. We do have lives.
That's not true. I've been chained to a radiator in the offices of What the Trans for the last year. Help me, save me. I'm blinking an SOS right now. I know you can't hear that, but... But yeah, no, big same. I've been playing Mafia recently. That's been fun.
Nice.
Yeah. And I've been watching Severance, and I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah,
and I know
good,
I mentioned this last time, but like, it's so good. And the more I'm watching it, the more I'm like, this is so not about just offices and like office culture. This is about religion. This is about like conditioning. To me, it feels like it's as close to a drama about Scientology that you're gonna get.
Yeah.
It feels very that.
We'll have to see if they like stick the landing, because if they bring it to a close in season 3 or 4 and all the answers are given, great. That's fine. If they spin it out for between 6 and 12 seasons and it just ends up being like Lost, where there's no resolution to any of it, and they've set up all of these amazing things that just never get mentioned again. So we shall see.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the moment, I am very much enjoying it.
I've also been doing Zentangles.
Oh, and what are they?
So there's this particular creator on YouTube or TikTok or wherever, the socials, the internet, who I would find myself briefly absorbed into these videos wholesale, and she would just like be talking about whatever, but she'd be doing this thing called Zentangles, which is where like you pick a shape or you make a line, whatever, and then the whole point is all you're doing is drawing around that shape, like in a repeated thing, and you aren't trying to keep the same shape that you first made. You're just tracing around the last shape that was made, which means that over time you get different kind of like shapes appear, and then there's negative space that forms, and then you make little traces in that, and it's very cool. And I would basically these videos for me would be like keys jangled in front of a baby. I would just like for a minute just become totally mute, completely silent, trapped in the mindfulness of the Zentangle. So I got a little notebook and some of my nice colouring pens, and I've started doing little Zentangles, and it's been a very fun like mindfulness thing where like you're creating something fun and cool, but it's not about making the best thing. It really breaks down that perfectionist streak in me. It really is good at getting you to not care and to just create. So that's been really fun.
That's really nice. So on the subject, you mentioned you were back on playing a bit of Mafia. So I've been playing Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
I've been hearing about this. Please tell me everything, because I want to know.
Okay. So it's not my usual type of game, because it's a turn-based thing that involves like dodging and parrying as well. So it's not just fully turn-based. But you have to get good at the dodging and the parrying, or you will not survive the fights, right? But if there was one word that I was going to use to sum up what it feels like to play Clair Obscur Expedition 33, that word would be French. Because it's like made by a French studio. All the characters have French names. Gustave, Ciel, and two others who I really should be able to remember, but I can't. And I've not gotten super far with it yet. I'm still in Act 1. I'm aware of some stuff that happens a bit later in the game, but I'm not gonna talk about that. because that's just what I've accidentally spoiled myself when I've been trying to consume content. It's very, very stylish is what it is. And the look of it is like visually arresting. And it's, you know, it doesn't look like any other game I've played. Like the art style, although it's kind of realistic in the way the people look, like they're also visually distinct from each other.
Yes.
The sort of main characters that you end up playing as. And so Gustav, who's kind of the main guy, you start the game with him, and when you kind of default back to the camp scenes, as in campsite rather than, oh, more camp than Christmas. I mean, it could be either, really. But when you default back to those scenes, Gustav is who you play as, right? It's just lovely. And I'll have more to say about it, because I suspect I know that this game is going to completely murder me emotionally.
Amazing.
Because it starts with that, right? It starts with introducing you to a few different characters, and you walk around and you speak to them, and then it kills most of the characters that you've just been introduced to. And that happens before you've ever really played much of it, you know? It's a heck of a thing, and I will have more to say on it when I've finished it. So give me another couple of weeks on that, perhaps longer. But I think you would like it, to be honest with you.
I've seen like adverts and trailers for it and stuff, and I've also had a couple of people like, you should try this one, and I keep meaning to. Part of the reason why I picked up Mafia again, actually, I basically when I was younger, I remember playing LA Noire, and this is back in the days where you could rent, like pre-Netflix love film era, where you would like rent a film and it would arrive to your doorstep, but it would be a DVD, so it's not quite the going to a shop to get a VHS thing. And I remember I played LA Noire, and I got really disillusioned with it when you get to the point where you're playing as Vice, because I was just like, I just feel like I want to be solving murders. I don't want to be busting people that just want to drink. So I ended up picking up Mafia from Love Film when I got bored with LA Noire. And I think it was the first one. I don't remember any of the story, but I remember it was the first time I played a game all the way to the end, and it was a story-focused game where, like, the ending of it, I was like, oh, damn, and it, like, really emotionally got me. And I can't remember if it was the first one or the second one, but I never forget that feeling of, like, oh, this game's like a full story, and I was watching things like, you know, Goodfellas and stuff like that at that time, because I went through a period as a teenager of going through all the film bro films. I decided to pick this up again because I've not played it as an adult, and so far everything's chill, but I'm waiting for that gut punch as well. I'm waiting for the gut punch of, I know there was something here that made me go, oh God. But I don't know which game it is or where it is. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it might not affect you in the same way.
It may not.
Now you are nominally an adult.
Barely.
Hearing you talk about hiring Love Film DVDs and games and shit has just made me reflect on just how old I have become, obviously. Because I used to cycle down to Blockbuster and hire, you know, a video or two or whatever, and buy some popcorn and shit, cycle back up the hill to go home. Yeah. Although it was up a hill, so most of it was walk the bike up the hill because I couldn't be bothered. You get me.
I'm smelling what you're stepping in,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and you did have to you had to rewind them.
Yeah, be kind, rewind. Absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly.
My dad used to take me to this little, God, it was when he was living in like Clapham, fucking years ago, and there was this little place that was like just round the corner from where he was at, and I remember he used to like take us there, and we'd pick out a film, and it would be all the VHSs there and whatnot. And bygone era now.
Yes.
I feel ancient.
Yeah, you and me both. Speaking of things from the here and now.
Should we take a stroll and a roll down good old Action Alley?
Yeah, let's do it. And you might spot a theme.
Yes. Also, we should probably mention no Alyx this week.
Oh yeah, shit. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, as you might have noticed. So there is a reason for why Alyx is not with us, which we'll get into more details a bit later on. But
Yes.
there was a thing at Parliament that Alyx went to and kind of burnt out all in one go.
Yeah,
If that
valid.
makes sense.
Valid. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is. Very much is a lot. And it happened yesterday as we record this.
Yeah.
So Alyx is exhausted and needed to take the night off. And we're like, okay, yeah, fine, fair enough.
Yeah.
Do that.
Go for it.
Go do it.
So, speaking of taking actions, we do have some actions this week, and they're all around a theme. So what we've done is we have some actions here that you can do to support Palestine Action, which, if you don't know what Palestine Action is, it's basically a network of activists that, well, they protest, they use direct action to try and target any properties and any sort of companies that are connected to war crimes in Palestine.
Yes, so they are currently the subject of potential legal ruling, although it's not going through the courts, it's going through Parliament, where they would be proscribed, as in they would be prohibited, they would be banned. And being involved in something under the Palestine Action banner would be a criminal offence. So that's kind of not good. There's a group saying, hey, there's this genocide we should stop, and they are being told that what they're doing is, just the fact that they're doing it on that basis is or should be illegal.
Yeah. I think they're going to, I think the thing with prescribing it and making it illegal is that they would be using terrorism law.
Yes.
They would essentially be making it akin to terrorism, which is gross and not a thing I agree with. I don't think that standing up against the genocide should be considered terrorism. Certainly not when you are campaigning in your own country, where you're a citizen, to help make sure that your country doesn't have as much blood on its hands that it already does. Because by God, don't the British state have a lot of blood on its hands already?
Yep.
So, one of the things that you can do that is the most direct is to donate to their legal fund. This is to obviously help make sure that this doesn't happen and that right to protest is still protected. So, yes, we will add the link for that for people who want to do it. There is also a film called To Kill a War Machine that has been made free. This is a film that is a collection of body cam footage and protest footage of people taking direct action in arms factories and places where war machines are made. War implements are made, weapons and such. And
or where those are funded, because some of the direct action that you can see in that film is directly aimed at Barclays, right? And Barclays don't manufacture weapons.
No.
But they fund it. That's worth doing, donating to the legal fight, and watching the film, which is showing in various cinemas all around the UK. There's a couple of showings in Liverpool. The film's only going to be released sort of mid-July. I think the 18th is the night of the premiere. So hopefully they can get a few more dates in a few more places around the country to show that film. And I'm specifically hoping that they put one in Manchester because there isn't one at the moment and I want to go and see the film. So being slightly selfish.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any in the northeast, but I'd love it if there was one in Newcastle. And then there is also still the fund for Trans Lifeline. There's a big fundraising campaign that's going on. Many people have been raising for it. We'll add the link to that. And we'll also throw in the link to Trans Legal Clinic as well. Because why not? If you can, please do.
Yep, always good to support these things and share them if you're not able to support them monetarily, because money's a bit tricky for a lot of people at the moment.
Yes, 'cause he lives.
All right, so onward then to the news.
To the news.
Yeah, let's play the jingle because it's time to pond hop.
Pond hopping, we're hopping across the pond. How bad could it be?
That's the punk version of it there.
Doom metal surf rock.
All right, so we're only doing the one story from the US this time, and you can probably guess which one it is. So let's talk about Skrmetti. If you're not sure what that is, the short version is that this was a case before the US Supreme Court dealing with a challenge made over a Tennessee law that bans any gender-affirming healthcare for under 18s. The plaintiffs in the case argued that the law is discriminatory. Unfortunately, the court voted 6-3 to uphold the law, claiming that there is no discrimination involved. According to Chief Justice John Roberts, who wrote for the majority verdict and said that the bill, quote, prohibits healthcare providers from administering puberty blockers or hormones to minors to treat gender dysphoria, gender identity disorder, or gender incongruence, regardless of the minor's sex. Then also said that the Equal Protection Clause does not resolve these disagreements. So the Supreme Court actually took some advice from some doctors, which is fine, you'd kind of expect that, but their choice of medical consultants drew criticism. This case ended up at the Supreme Court because a Tennessee federal court ruled the ban was unconstitutional. So, the doctors who defended the ban at the Tennessee federal court, their evidence was assessed by the court back then, and it was decided that at least two of the doctors, Dr. Paul Cruz and Michael Laidlaw, had, quote, deficiency in their experience, and it also said that their arguments were minimally persuasive. Just to stick with Cruz for a moment, in a deposition in 2017 he swore, I intentionally do not treat transgender patients. In 2023, an Arkansas federal judge said he was testifying more from a religious doctrinal standpoint rather than that required of experts. So, can you guess which medical experts the US Supreme Court spoke to when they were deciding their case? Yes, you've guessed it. It was Cruz, Laidlaw, and 4 other medics who all have, quote, a history of advocating against trans healthcare. Out of 6 medics in total, 5 of them have been, quote, rebuked or discounted by judges in previous cases because of their backgrounds. Those 2 last little nuggets are from a Guardian article which we'll link to below. So who would have guessed that a court would use one-sided and biased medical information to make a discriminatory ruling about trans people? Perish the thought.
Yeah, I've never heard of such a thing in my life.
I know. So in no country in the world, certainly none of the ones that speak English.
Goodness no, we're held to a higher standard than that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this shit gets me angry.
Yeah, same. Me too, honestly, because, I mean, how could it not, obviously? Just think about who you are and who you're listening to at the moment. Of course, this is going to make us angry. They knew what they were doing, right? The justices who voted against this, and we're going to see that 6-3 ratio in the Supreme Court. We're going to see that popping up all the more frequently, I think, when it comes to, you know, human rights.
I'm trying to think of a thing that I haven't already said before. It's just a continued fuckery of these people who are completely biased. They're completely, they note themselves that they are not arguing from a medical perspective.
Yes.
That they are openly bigoted. If you intentionally do not treat certain patients, there's no way for that to not be bigoted. And what a surprise that birds of a feather flock together yet again. They just always seem to be the most powerful birds in the room with the biggest wings that make big wind gusts for the rest of us to have to fucking deal with. And, solidarity to the American trans communities out there, because if I'm this pissed, then God, I can only imagine how upset yous are.
Yeah, quite. I'm just deeply concerned as to the precedent that this is going to set and the other cases that this will be used to decide now. No, we're not going to investigate that case because the Supreme Court have already decided it for us.
Yeah, which is the problem when Supreme Courts make clearly deeply inaccurate and biased judgments, but yeah.
Anyway,
right.
Onward.
And whilst we hop back over the pond, we are not going to be going straight to England as we normally would. We're actually going to be going to the Czech Republic. There was a recent trans win in the European Court of Human Rights, and also there is a correction to make that I need to make. You see, last episode, when we were reporting on the Women's Inequality Select Committee meeting, I accidentally misattributed a particular paragraph that talks about the Supreme Court and Article 8, the right to privacy, being very relevant when it comes to trans people. I accidentally said that was from the Supreme Court judgment in this country. That's not the case. I was wrong. That particular paragraph relating to Article 8 is not from the Supreme Court ruling of this country. It is actually from this case that we're about to go through, because this is also a pretty good win. It's a pretty big one and a pretty nice one. The case was against TH versus the Czech Republic, where TH was a non-binary Czech citizen who had spent over a decade trying to update their documents. At the time of writing, the systems for legal gender recognition in Czechia still require surgery and sterilisation, requirements which the European Court unsurprisingly found to be in violation of trans people's Article 8 rights. See, this is why it was still relevant to the last episode, because it's not because it shows the Supreme Court in this country actually, does say that Article 8 is important. No, even better, it says that a court higher than the Supreme Court in this country recognises that Article 8, the right to privacy, is vitally important for trans people. Mm-hmm. Now, the need for new gender recognition laws in Czechia has been well established by previous court cases, including a ruling by the Czech Constitutional Court last year. In fact, last year's ruling put an expiry date on the surgical requirements for legal gender recognition, so if you're listening to this after June 2025, those surgical requirements should be gone. Now, that said, there's still tons of legislative work to be done to actually create a good gender recognition process. But it's a step, right? And I hope the pressure from the European Court of Human Rights might help make good things happen even faster. And by the way, thank you very much to Melissa, who spotted this and reached out to us and just let us know that this mistake had been made. Because, yes, thank you for keeping me on my toes.
Yeah, that's good. And it kind of bodes well for a potential appeal to the European Court of Human Rights with regards to the Supreme Court decision, doesn't it?
Yes, it really does. It really does. And that's fantastic.
Yes.
One of the things that's part of it is the claimant here, TH, suggested to the court that having to repeatedly out themselves by presenting documents all the time could constitute a human rights violation. And the court actually didn't feel the need to examine this argument, but they also didn't completely reject it, which is why it's it's good, but we can be doing better. There's also the fact that, because Sammy picked this up, there's also the fact that despite them being non-binary and using neutral or feminine pronouns, that's not reflected in the court documents.
Yeah.
Somewhat right answer, but awkward workings out.
Mm. Yeah, could do better.
Yeah, but a win is a win, and
for sure.
Let's just hope it galvanizes, gets that snowball rolling and all that.
Yeah, God, I hope so. We should never have stepped away from Europe, but I've been saying that since 2016, obviously, which means I've been banging that particular drum for nearly 10 years. So don't need to repeat myself, but I'm glad the European Court of Human Rights is there, because otherwise, for us, as well as for TH and so many other people, there would have been no recourse. There would have been no way to fight back against some of these judgments.
Shall we get back to Blighty now?
Let's boogie on back to Blighty. Okay, let's talk about the EHRC again, because they seem to have quite a regular segment on this show now.
They should be paying us for the promotion.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about how the EHRC have been ideologically captured by the anti-trans movement isn't even news at this point. It's something we've spoken about many times before, including in literally the last episode we did. So we're not going to belabor the point too much here. However, in another story from the Trans Advocacy and Complaints Collective, or TACC, Another Freedom of Information request has revealed more damning data from inside the EHRC, once again showing that the EHRC had met with Sex Matters, but this time from back in 2023. The meeting notes that Sex Matters decided to go hard before going home, including by bluntly stating that, quote, trans women and men do not exist legally. That's according to Maya Forstader, and is demonstrably wrong, or the Gender Recognition Act would not exist.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
The GRA specifically states that a person with a gender recognition certificate has changed their gender for all legal purposes. But rather than pointing out this flaw or pushing back on it in any appreciable way, the EHRC were quite receptive to this bold new interpretation of decades-old legislation. Indeed, the TACC article about all this uses the phrase listening, not challenging. Throughout the meeting, and indeed in their work more broadly, Sex Matters have had a single overarching goal: to rewrite UK equality law to exclude trans people. Over the last few years, they have had unprecedented access to the EHRC to try and make this happen, while trans people have been systematically excluded. Furthermore, it looks as if the EHRC have been actively obfuscating Sex Matters' role in all of these meetings and their decisions. From the TACC statement, quote, the original disclosure.pdf states that the meeting was arranged at the chairwoman's request, a claim the EHRC later walked back in their FOI response. The chairwoman did not proactively seek a meeting with Sex Matters. It was only after being approached did the commission agree to the meeting. End quote. So how come the EHRC didn't bother to correct this before the Freedom of Information request told them that they had to? How come the details of this meeting weren't proactively published as you would expect them to be? Again, from TACC, to make matters worse, the page footers suggest missing content. Pages that the EHRC claims never existed despite formatting inconsistencies. This signals, at best, poor documentation practices and, at worst, possible withholding of information. Which, that's the end of that quote. I just want to finish up by saying that this demonstrates once again how trans people have been rigorously excluded from any and all EHRC conversations that are about us. There's obviously a few PDF documents linked to all this, and this meeting acted as a kind of prequel to the meeting that we talked about on our last episode, which also grew out of some FOI requests created by TACC, and obviously we'll link to both articles in the usual place. So, was this surprising for you?
I mean, this was about as surprising as a duck's ass being watertight. I don't really, it is more one of the things that is we've got that connection now. We've got it solidly, we've got it concretely. And now that we know more about how they're acting, how insidious all of this is, how much they really have just kind of been schmoozing with people who, if they could have their way, we wouldn't exist. It means we can put more pressure on that. It means that we can now do even more detailed FOI requests. There can be, even more stuff. I'm very glad that this has been concretely found, and yeah, but I'm not surprised at all. I am only really surprised at how much further, how much deeper and more solid the camaraderie between the two is.
Yeah.
I thought that maybe the HRC would try and be a little bit less overtly, I don't want to say bloodthirsty, but
I mean, not that, but not that.
Yeah, how openly they have been willing to cozy up to cruel and callous thoughts and ideas that go so totally against anything that the EHRC is meant to stand for.
Yes.
It is actually quite starkly surprising, because I would have thought that you would want to play it a little bit smarter and a little bit safer than that. But I guess if you've got it that well infiltrated, you'll probably think, bets are off. Yeah. Let's not put our foot on the brakes. Let's just put our pedal to the metal.
Let's just do it. Yeah.
And it looks like that's what they've done. So Yeah, it's the boldness and the brazenness of it that's the only thing that really got me.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and speaking of things that are pretty brazen... Yeah, so last episode we reported on Faulkner giving evidence before the Women and Equality Select Committee, which is part of the EHRC's annual scrutiny, and though it should be noted that Faulkner did actually say, quote, "Society is not based on policing outside toilets." Okay.
Yeah.
But by the end of the committee session, there were in fact 2 transphobes policing the nearest ladies' toilets. And yes, they'd both attended that same committee session. The transphobes made loud complaints when they saw parliamentary staff direct a trans woman to that nearest ladies' loo. Staff on site instructed the transphobes to stop and ultimately escorted both transphobes away from the loo. Unfortunately, they continued to whine via email and an article in the Times, because that's what I do. If they're not answering my email, I will just put an article in the Times, because that's definitely something I've got the power to do, and that's certainly normal.
That's normal human actions.
So after that, Parliament officials issued an apology to the transphobes, saying, "We acknowledge that it is likely the individual you complained about should not have been directed to the female facilities, and we apologise for that." Ugh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Subsequently, Parliament's official visitors policy got a new paragraph suggesting its toilets are trans-exclusionary now, but at least there are some gender-neutral loos somewhere, apparently. So that update was a bit of a surprise. Previously, the official word was that Parliament's toilet policy wouldn't be revised until after the EHRC guidance was fully published. It's also a bit concerning because this change came only a couple of days before a trans mass lobby event was scheduled in Parliament, and more on that in a bit.
I was aware of this. I was not aware of the apology.
Right.
That's because I've been focusing on other parts of the episode to get written and
Indeed.
stuff. The way that I immediately wanted to laugh, but you know when it's that kind of angry laugh of like, oh, you absolute fuckers.
Yeah.
Like, Okay. Yeah. No, this is awful. It's horrifying. It's gross. It is also so mundanely morbid for this time and era that we're in.
Like, if they're going to be evil, can't you at least wear a cape and laugh maniacally every so often, right? At least be fun and cartoonishly evil rather than this banality of evil Adolf Eichmann bullshit.
Mr. Worf, villains who twirl their moustaches are easy to spot. Those who clothe themselves in good deeds are well camouflaged.
But the thing is, right, is that all of the most interesting and fun villains are queer.
Yeah.
So, you know, are we expecting a fish to climb a tree by expecting them to be interesting in the way that they're evil?
Scathing commentary. I love it.
It's ridiculous.
Like, didn't they have anything better to do than, like, lurk outside the toilets?
Right. Like, also, can we just bring up how the level of projection it takes to be making the argument that people will stand outside of loos or go into toilets specifically to victimize people. And that's why you need to roll back an entire group of minorities' rights. Meanwhile, what do? You stand outside of the toilets and go into the toilets with the aims of harassing people and assaulting people.
Yes.
So, please tell me who's the danger here. Because I don't think it's us.
Someone's.
In fact, no, I know it's not us.
Someone's missing the irony, aren't they?
Well, it's projection. It's,
for sure.
It's a level of like really, really disgusting. Like there's a level of complete lack of awareness that's actually dangerous. Like it actually is dangerous if it's to the point where you're going to accost people in the very way that you weaponize. Like it's gross. It's gross. It is. Anyway, if you thought we were outside the Houses of Parliament,
nope,
not yet.
Losers Corner.
I know the Normally Losers Corner is, like, by definition about people that have tried to do a transphobia and failed, like some real you stood on your own rake kind of thing that reminds us that the world can be reasonable and good, and that in all of the madness that's usually very negative, compassion and dignity can win. But this week is a little bit different. In fact, this week is my favourite kind of Losers Corner, because there's not really a loser, there's just a load of winners. So let's talk about the mass lobby, eh?
Yeah.
So, you might remember, we've shouted it out a few times now and encouraged people to go to it. A mass lobby is essentially when people organise in a large group from wherever, across the country, whatever, to go to the Houses of Parliament on the same day in order to speak to their MP about a certain issue. Usually to show the topic at hand is a widespread issue that has many constituents from various places affected and are concerned by whatever thing, and that they want to see a change on it, right? There have been previous mass lobbies for things like climate crisis, disability cuts, the biggest previous example being the mass lobby against Section 28. Well, Trans Solidarity Alliance organised this recent lobby called Unite for Trans Rights, and around 1,400 people signed up. And so far, there were reportedly over 900 people there, which is more than what I've seen reported for previous examples that we have mentioned just now, like the Section 28 one and stuff like that. I've heard that it's bigger turnout than them. And so if you're really, really desperate for a loser, then let's just say that anti-trans agitators everywhere are the losers. Because, babes, you could never... Like, let's be real. Your best efforts get what? 10 people in a park at best, spouting pseudo-neo-Nazi nonsense, if not actually reading Mein Kampf like what happened in Newcastle. And yet look at us. Look at what we managed to do. Look at the love. Look at the community. Look at the mobilization that happens when we know that there is work to do. Fuck yeah. And anyway, so I wasn't able to be there. If you follow our socials though, you will know a couple of people from our team were there. Lily and obviously the wonderful Alyx, which is why she is not here, because Lass is tired.
Yes.
So we have this little write-up from her, and we also have some interviews that she managed to secure with people on the day. You've got to do your best Alyx impression now, Ashleigh.
Yesterday, I got invited by TSA, Trans Solidarity Alliance, to report on and watch their
mass lobby in Parliament on the day. I'd never been inside of the Houses of Parliament before, so that was exciting. From what I can see, most lobbies or mass lobbies are done inside of a lobby area of Houses of Parliament, a small corridor just ahead of Westminster Hall. But this time it was done in Westminster Hall because they were expecting a large amount of people to join, and even that got filled to capacity. It got to the point that people had to be herded out so more people could come in to request to meet their MP and have a fair shot at it. Inside Westminster Hall there was a table for people to sign in with TSA so they could keep track of numbers. They lost track of the numbers because there were so many people, and next to the table there was a PA system for parliamentary staff to call out names of MPs and for people to meet their MPs so everyone could hear when their MPs had arrived for them. People were lining up down the block to meet their MP in baking hot temperatures with no sun for over 4 hours. TSA overran their expected 4 PM end time by 2 hours because of how many people turned up. It might have been even more. Back in the 80s, for Section 28, it was found that 850 people turned up from that event, and in a way, a target to beat in terms of attendance, and they smashed it. The numbers we got could be even bigger. I wouldn't even be surprised if it was actually 1,000 people. Parliamentary staffers told us it was the biggest mass lobby they've ever seen in the 10 years they had worked there. From what I could tell from other volunteers who had been speaking to people as they had finished their interviews with MPs, there was a lot of positive feedback, but there was also some towing of the party line, not quite wanting to step out of line and be too supportive, but lots of important data for
TSA to work with.
So, we first up have this brief interview with Charlie Halstead from LGBT Lib Dems, which is the first time that Alyx met them. Interview.
Yeah.
How did you find the event?
Yeah, it's been really good. Seen a lot of MPs around who I know, and got to meet with my own, which was Lovely. She was really, really nice, seemed really receptive, saying all the right things, so fingers crossed Helen Hayes is nicely on side for us.
Was having a good chat with Pippa, wasn't it? One of the MPs.
Yeah, so as some people may remember, I'm co-chair of LGBT plus Lib Dems. So obviously we've been encouraging our MPs to turn up, and we've even had Brian Paddock out and about, which is lovely. Pippa was walking through the hall, and I shouted over Pippa, wanted to say hi. She came over for a little chat, and then one of her staffers came up and was like, "Would you like to come and actually meet your constituents now?" I was like, I feel really terrible. So if you were there to meet Pippa, I'm very sorry for stealing your MP. I didn't mean to. I didn't realise she was actually meeting with someone. I just thought she was walking through the hall.
Oh, that was hilarious. So I suppose when you spoke to the MP you were supposed to talk to, Charlie, how did that go?
Really good. Like I said, she was seemed very receptive. So part of my background is I studied international criminal law at uni. As part of that, I've studied genocides and various other the worst things people can do to each other, really. And all the genocides that I have looked at, they all take the same path. You identify your other, you make them criminal, they're groomers, they're predators, they're thieves, they're murderers, whatever it happens to be. You dehumanise them. It goes on to societal oppression and exclusion, and then legal oppression and exclusion.
So how's their reaction to that?
Seemed to take it on board quite well. But there was none of the nothing. Obviously, that's hyperbole that you're making up. It's never going to go that far. So she'd seem to take it on board as it being a very real and genuine concern, which was nice.
Yeah, I suppose for the whole event, it was masses of trans people coming in to get their voices heard.
It's so amazing. So when they're saying, like, if you've met your MP, can you please go away, because we've got over 200 people who haven't even got through the first stage of security yet, and the queue is immense. I bumped into somebody I work with who said they'd been stood outside waiting to get in for 2 hours.
Oh, God.
And they'd only just gotten in. So I think it really does show the strength of feeling and how many people really care about this, whether they're trans or they're cis.
And then she also managed to speak to Tim Farron, who seemed supportive.
Well, we'll come back to that.
Apparently had a little slip up with language there, yeah? So interview.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for being here. Massive turnout.
Yeah, massive turnout at the Mass Lobby. How have you been finding it so far?
Really good. Just talked to a whole bunch of people from different backgrounds. My patch is a long way from London, so I'm hoping for 2 or 3 folks to come down to say hello. But whilst I'm waiting, it's a joy to talk to you.
No, definitely. I mean, you've seen people bustling around and such. Have you had many letters from your constituents regarding the Supreme Court ruling?
Yes, I do. I mean, from all different perspectives, but yes, and there's no doubt that amongst the trans community in South Lakes, in Westmoreland, there are people who feel deeply troubled by it and feel a sense of being more marginalised than they felt to start off with. So yeah, it's an issue that I think people feel really concerned about, and so obviously it's one of the issues that people are raising today.
Yeah, definitely, and there's lots of side effects from the Supreme Court ruling, including a trans toilet ban in Westminster. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's never really bothered me who use what loo, and I think if you look around here, a significant number of the loos in Westminster are not gender specific. So I kind of think that we're fixating on the wrong issue, and it troubles me, and it's not just. I don't think it's just transgender people who are bothered about it, so it's a great concern of mine that we are making people feel marginalised, making people feel second or class or worse, and that whatever people think about the issue, it just makes it all the more toxic and unpleasant.
With a Supreme Court ruling, there's always just so much confusion, which is, would you say, the opposite of clarity?
Well, so when the Supreme Court ruling came out, I made the point of reading it, and it's a lot more balanced than a lot of people say. The judges at the time, okay, they made the ruling, but they also talked about how this shouldn't be seen as a victory for one side or another, and so I think for those people who have been really unpleasant towards trans people, that I don't think that ruling gives them any licence to treat transgender identified people as, as any less than them. We believe in equality. Everybody's of equal value and equal worth.
I see, and they always get lots of the airtime. And do you think trans voices are being ignored in this whole sort of thing?
My sense is, and it applies to every area of public life, I'm afraid, is that the media, I'm sure not you, right? But the media wants sensation. It wants division. It doesn't want nuance. It doesn't want people to be politely curious about what other people think. It doesn't want conciliation. It doesn't want people agreeing well. It wants people in trenches lobbing bricks at each other. And so my sense is, and it's not just on the trans issue, lots of other, migration will be another one example as well, that you have the media wants hits and clicks, you kind of understand that, but it poisons the debate, not just on this issue.
Thank you very much for joining us.
This is old school, by the way, in a really good way. People turning up because they're concerned about an issue, putting in a green card, an actual bit of green paper, old school, where you say, I'm here to see my MP, and your MP comes to see you. That's kind of proper good. Here we are in a 1,000-year-old building at the heart of British democracy, and here we got people from around the country coming to tell their MP what they think and trying to find out what they think. So thank you for being part of it.
So yeah, trans-identified people, maybe not the best phrasing, but
Yeah, like, could have Googled that one, to be honest, Tim. Tim, my boy. But because everyone was in such a rush, Alyx has put here, I had to keep things a little bit more softball just to keep things moving, which is valid. And then next up, we have the wonderful Natasha Kennedy. Spoke to her about her latest peer-reviewed paper, which is also something that Cass never got for her review. So interview.
Yeah, so we're at the Westminster at the moment and at the Mass Lobby event. How have you found the event so far?
It was really quite good. My MP, Clive Efford, who is for Eltham and Chislehurst, he was very, very welcoming. He listened for a very long time. There was two of us together from his constituency, and he listened for a long time, and we made loads and loads of points. He even came out and got me because I hadn't got the email on me to get in. So he just came out and got me and brought me in, and we went and sat in the cafe bit where they have meetings. And he listened. I think he gets the idea that it's a disruption to our lives. We've been living our lives, in this way in my case, for decades. And it's a ridiculous disruption to our lives. And I think he also gets the idea that dividing by, in inverted commas, biological sex is nonsensical, because it's not about the way we live our lives. And that needs, the fact that we exist means that we exist.
Oh, exactly, yeah. So, it's good to see that they were very supportive and everything. And I suppose very recently as well, you published a new paper as well.
Yes.
Some interesting topics.
Yes, I mean that the paper demonstrated the harm that's being caused to young trans people by the puberty blocker ban. And it gave evidence, and a lot of that is it's not been accounted for. It wasn't accounted for in the CAS review. There was nothing about what's going to happen, to young trans people. Nothing about their mental health or anything like that, and the trauma and that sort of thing. And actually, one of the things that concerns me now is this working group that Wes Streeting's got, that's apparently trying to remove access to cross-sex hormones for under 18s as well. Again, in the terms of reference for that group, there's nothing about the effects on young trans people, and those effects are considerable. Traumatised, stressed, depressed, not going to school, withdrawing from social contact with their friends.
Some points made on a paper as well, from what I can recall.
Yeah, that was one of the big things. And also, one of the big things was the fact that it's not just sort of a one-off boom hit that's stressful. It's something that carries on and on and on. It's ever present. It's always there for them, and that is a big deal, because that will cause trauma. It will cause a lot of harm well into adulthood. You know, they're going to be traumatized for decades potentially with this, and that is serious harm. And you know, it's going to be serious harm to their physical as well as mental health, and that really concerns me. I think that is quite a big deal. When they implemented the puberty blocker ban, they claimed it was to protect trans kids. Yeah, they are obviously not protecting trans kids. They are harming trans kids. And you know, this is a peer-reviewed article.
Yeah, TACC review didn't get that, did she?
No. I mean, the TACC review isn't peer-reviewed, which means my article is automatically of higher status. Yeah, it is, and that is not insignificant. You know, the TACC review has been criticised for not being peer-reviewed. In another peer-reviewed article, there's been a lot of very heavy criticism of TACC. This is the first time anyone's actually investigated the effects of the ban that came from that. I mean, I've been sitting with this data and I've been interviewing kids who've been harmed, kids who are, you know, traumatised or suicidal, or who were. It's heartbreaking, you know. Sometimes I've had to curl up in a ball in a corner and cry, literally, you know. It's horrible to be. I mean, I've been sort of living with this for like 9 months, you know, doing it.
And getting especially close to it all as well, because you've got to go through all the data. Yeah.
I mean, I had to go through the data and interview people, and you know, all of that. And I think that Streeting needs to reconsider. I don't know whether he will, but he needs to, because he's harming children. And it's I mean, it's difficult to say, but it's when the government is mandating harm to a group of kids, it's completely unacceptable, and it's not happening in a lot of other countries. You know, there's
definitely,
and puberty blockers are actually available over the counter in Spain. They're considered that safe, you know.
Exactly. Have you brought up your the findings from your paper to your MP today as well?
I mentioned it. Yes, he's seen the preprint of it anyway. So, I mean, I want to try and get it to Wed Streeting and other people like that. I mean, I'm also trying to talk to members of the Scottish, Welsh, and Northern Irish assemblies. So, if any of your readers have a connection there, I would like them to take it to them. Yeah, or get in touch with me. I'm very happy. I'll fly to Belfast if necessary, or get the train to Edinburgh or whatever. I don't care. I'll go and talk to people about it. You know, so it's that important to me.
And then we have the also lovely Nadia Whittam. Interview.
So, how have you found the Mass Lobby event so far?
It's been incredible. There's been an absolutely huge turnout, and I've seen lots of MPs here, including MPs who maybe haven't spoken about this issue previously, who are here because their constituents have contacted them and are listening to their stories about how the draft EHRC guidance and the Supreme Court ruling, but also the wider rollback of trans rights is impacting them.
No, definitely with the Supreme Court ruling, it's just been a gigantic growth of people coming up and everything. So have you had many letters from your constituents regarding this?
Regarding the Mass Lobby specifically?
Oh, about this issue?
Oh, loads of emails from constituents who are either trans themselves, have a trans child, or are trans allies. And in fact, I was saying to one of my constituents who came today to kind of let them know like how great the support is for them in Nottingham, that it might feel like there are so many people who are transphobic and who want to strip trans people of their rights, but actually I get I obviously get a huge volume of emails on all sorts of issues, and the number of emails that I get from constituents that are hostile to trans people or transphobic are tiny, and the number of supportive emails that I get from constituents who are allies is huge.
Exactly. You've probably been seeing trends from your colleagues as well. Do you think the law needs to be changed following the ruling?
Yeah, clearly it does. I mean, Parliament is sovereign, as we know. I was very disappointed by the Supreme Court ruling, and I think the ruling itself was obviously contentious, and we've heard from a former civil servant who oversaw the drafting of the Equality Act and its passage through Parliament, who said that actually that wasn't what the intention of the Act was. But just putting that aside for a moment, the EHRC guidance goes way beyond this, and regardless of what the Supreme Court says, it's there's a separation of powers. It's the role of the Supreme Court to interpret legislation based on what it thinks Parliament's intention was. But Parliament is sovereign. Parliament can say, this is what we want the law to be. We want it to be trans-inclusive, and that's what a Labour government should be doing.
I suppose with the whole big theme of this is tons of trans people are coming and need to get their voices heard. Do you feel like trans voices have been ignored throughout this whole process?
They really have. We've had these so-called debates about trans people, about their fundamental human rights, while it's not even just that trans people have been absent from those conversations. They've been actively shut out by a hostile, transphobic media backed by big money that is, right from Elon Musk down to Tufton Street, that is investing in this culture war against trans people.
It's been absolutely crowded here. I mean, people are still out waiting in security past the block and everything, fully down the whole street. It's just been absolutely mad.
I think the only kind of additional thing that I was going to say on trans people's voices is that even though trans people make up 0.5% of the population, there are daily headlines scapegoating trans people as a threat, as the cause of people's problems in this country, and actually we need to be hearing far less from columnists and media pundits and certain politicians as well, claiming to be silenced, who we don't stop hearing from, and we need to be hearing far more from trans people themselves, and that's why it's so important that people have come en masse today and demanded to be heard by their MPs.
And then we also have these two interviews with people who finished their chats with their MPs that we can bring to you here now as well. Interview.
All right, I'm with Becky, she, her. We're just at the Westminster Hall, or just outside of it. Found a little quiet area to chat. So how are you finding the mass lobby at the moment?
I think it's very good. It seems very well supported. It's good to see so many people from all over really that's come to join it, and I've been very lucky that my MP was prepared to see me.
How did that meeting go?
I thought it went very well. Luckily, I annotated the information that was given out in the appendix, and she asked for a copy of it and took it away with her. So hopefully she will look through it in a bit more detail. And she did seem to be very agreeable that, yes, it doesn't seem fit for purpose. So hopefully she will be on our side.
Oh, definitely. Which MP was that again?
Claire Young, MP for Thornbury.
We've seen a gigantic trans toilet ban. We're just quite near it, actually. What are your thoughts on the thing in Westminster?
I will not be... Oh, well, the Westminster ones, yeah, I'm a bit disappointed. But to be honest, I went through there and used the ladies.
Yeah, I did that as well.
It stopped me, so I thought, fair enough.
Yeah, because I think we heard from security that they weren't going to be policing it, and anyone who does police it isn't supposed to be policing it in the first place. This whole event is about hearing trans voices, isn't it?
Yeah, I just feel I had to come, had to speak, try and see my MP, because I'm full-time, and really, if this really does go through, it's putting me almost in a box, isn't it, really?
trans voices are just being ignored in all this.
Yes, well, we weren't consulted, were we? They actually excluded trans people, and they didn't include intersex. And apparently, Baroness Faulkner said she didn't include them because they were in the Equalities Act, so they just got left out.
Yeah, the whole Article 8 thing. Perfect. Thanks so much. I think that's...
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm with Alyx, she, her. Thank you for joining us. So, yeah, how have you found the event at the Mass Lobby so far?
I think it's been productive. It's been very intimidating coming here, especially given certain things that have happened in the past couple of days, but I've come here and I've found it quite hopeful. I think my meeting with my MP went really well, so...
Yes, who is your MP you were chatting with today?
Kanishka Narayan.
Kanish, so how did that sort of meeting go? You mentioned it went quite well.
Yeah, I think he's supportive. He thinks the EHRC guidance proposal is overreaching, and when I told him about Westminster implementing a toilet ban 2 days before this mass lobby, he was genuinely appalled. So
yes, so have you seen any action he might have promised following the meeting? Or?
Well, he's still trying to get in touch with Bridget Phillipson, who is, of course, no answer yet. But he's also trying in the sort of local area, in like the Vale of Glamorgan area, to sort of help accommodate trans people better. So.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt when you're in mid-flow. Are you filming for... is this a personal thing?
This is an audio interview.
Have you been given permission to...
by Trans Solidarity Alliance?
Okay, so just checking that it's been agreed with Sergeant Arms team here.
I think so, yeah. They've sort of told me my role was sort of going around speaking to people and recording. Thank you.
So, that's a lot.
Yes. The topic of the Westminster toilet ban came up, and I heard from sources that Westminster staffers had decided not to police the ban on the day. And I, of course, used the women's loo because that's the right toilet. Though not the toilet Westminster would agree with. And no one got hurt. It was chill. There were no incidents either. It was quite quiet. I think they knew that if transphobes made a scene or an incident and it appeared in the news, it would have to highlight just how many people had appeared at the event that day and shown them up. Aside from that, a day that felt like it was a day for the history books, and I'm very thankful and honoured for being invited and being there to see it unfold, and it was fantastic to meet new faces and old ones. It's always hilarious when people recognise my voice and not my face. It's like, yeah, I get what you're saying there, Alyx, picking up what you're putting down.
I've had that happen once now. It was meeting up with some people to, like, so that we could all go in a group safely to one of the Supreme Court protests. And so it was like some people that I knew from like a queer group or whatever, but some people I hadn't met before. And when when I was like, hello, people, is this me? They were like, oh, I recognize your voice. Oh my God. And I was like, oh, this is strange. I've not had this before. Hi. But yeah, I also have a little bit of intel from some lovely friends of mine who went to the day itself as well. When they went to see their MP, she was really supportive. The way they put it is either she's a fantastic liar or she's a good ally, just a little bit naive. And that's great. That's, you know, that's much more workable than some of the other people's experiences.
Yes.
They said that they spoke to one person who, when they had managed to speak to their MP, basically said to them, when you change sex, you give up those rights.
Right.
Which is disgusting.
Yes.
Which is disgusting and is completely irrespective of how law works and how human rights works. But okay, babe. But, when my friends were speaking with their MP, said that she was going to follow up on meetings with them and, you know, try and organize things and was very willing to listen and to learn and to actually implement what was learned. And that's what a lot of the point of this is. It's to put faces and names to the conversation.
Yes.
It's to say, when you debate this in Parliament, this is the face you're seeing. This is the voice that you are talking over.
Yes.
And, you know, you can either boost that voice or you can talk over it. That's how it is. And yeah, so they said that there were so many people. It was amazing. It was, you know, as Alyx has said, it's, you know, overwhelming the system levels of people turning out, which is just fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that we see an impact from this. Like,
indeed.
Really hopeful.
Although we certainly didn't in the media, did we?
No.
Because this
no,
might have
not
well have not been taking place.
But pretty much all legacy media ignored it from what I can see. Lee Hurley did a Patreon article about the lack of media response because there's been like nothing, really. Honestly, at this point, even if they did put something, I feel like it would likely be reported in such a maliciously manipulative way.
Yeah. Sometimes there will, journalists, well, hacks really, will try and use the excuse, oh, we didn't know. But that can't be possible because they, like a lot of journalists, were informed ahead of time that this was going to be taking place, like all, you know, like all of Fleet Street, the BBC.
Yeah.
So they were contacted well in advance, and the BBC response was described by one volunteer as snotty and included a line which seems to sum up the tone, which is, "We'll get back to you if we're interested." So, yeah, just fucking gross. So it wasn't that they didn't know, they did know. The community informed them well ahead of time, and they still elected to not talk about it at all.
Yeah, they put their fingers in their ears and they taped up their mouths and then said, "Oh no, it's fine. We just weren't aware." It's like, okay, well, if you're not aware of a mass gathering like this, then you are incompetent at best. And if you are aware and you choose not to, then, well, that says what it says, doesn't it?
Quite.
That just says what it says. So, yeah,
fun times.
I'm really interested to see how this shakes out. Hopefully,
me too.
Hopefully some people have gone home that night and they've really got some stuff to talk about and think about and moves and actions to make. Hopefully, you know, the way that we, and by we I mean the community, engage with people has really helped kind of change things around. And if not at the very least, there's going to be a lot more people in various communities across the country now who now know what their MP is like, if their MP gives a shit or not, if their MP has their back or not, if their MP is worth voting for next time or not, right? So
yes,
that is at the very least a good thing anyway, knowing who your people are and if they're worth engaging with. Feeling hungry?
Oh yes, definitely a bit peckish.
Hey, well, we've got some meat today.
Om nom nom.
An interesting thing here, the meat for this episode is something a little bit different. I know that normally we're focusing on topical things, the biggest and often scariest stories of the last fortnight. But here's the thing. Sometimes the important conversations aren't topical. And if we're only focusing on what's happening to our community all the time, then we run the risk of doing a disservice to the equally important things happening within our community, the conversations that are happening between us and the things that are important not just for survival, but to really thrive and live full lives, right? So to say I'm excited for this next interview with Dion, who is a zine maker, is a little bit of an understatement because this is like, I'm so glad that we have an opportunity to highlight the conversation that we're about to get into, but also being able to, like, you know, I want to do stuff like this in the future. I want to have more community-based conversations where we're talking about us and where we're at and what we're doing, and the bigots will still exist, right?
Yes.
But sometimes we just need a moment to go, fuck that noise. Let's focus on us for a minute, and I like that energy. So, zines.
Yes.
In case there's anyone totally uninitiated, right, who has no idea, I'm going to give a very brief crash course, right? So zines are small DIY magazines that usually focus on specific subcultures or specific interests and knowledge. They contain everything from fiction, non-fiction, comics, poetry, whatever. They've been around for decades. You could, well, longer than decades really. You could technically start the history of this going back hundreds of years to the distributions of small pamphlets on specialized knowledge throughout various parts of the world as printing press technologies became more accessible. For example, Magnus Hirschfeld's 1896 pamphlet called Sophor and Socrates argued that queerness is not an illness and was an anti-pathologization kind of take, which, again, just repeating that year, 1896. The form that we know them in, however, started realistically with the 30s, with fan-made magazines on horror, sci-fi, and others before booming in popularity in the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s and 30s, which is the time and place that actually saw many creative figures that we still know of today, just in case you weren't aware. This includes musicians such as Louis Armstrong, Ma Rainey, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, people like Josephine Baker, and also, I didn't know this, but when I was doing research, a figure that I know just from the history of hip-hop, Pigmeat Markham, who is a guy that made what we consider one of the first hip-hop records of all time. Go check out the song Here Comes the Judge. Tell me that's not hip-hop happening in the 30s. It's sick. It's very cool. I came across it in a documentary on hip-hop. I came across the song and Pigmeat Markham. So when I saw that name pop up, I was like, oh, sick. Now, we have an example of one such zine that's available for free. We've linked that in the description, called Fire, and that's from the period of the Harlem Renaissance, made in 1926. Over the next decades, zines would become increasingly popular in various subcultures, music, politics, and of course, queerness, especially over the next decades as the movements for queer liberation would only pick up more and more steam. Now, I really could talk here for hours about the queer history of zines because there is a lot. And instead, I'm going to leave you with a few links to a couple of articles on the queer history and archives and bring the TARDIS back to today. Roll the interview! Now, just a brief note before we get into this interview. Firstly, Dion has asked us to anonymise his voice, which of course we're going to respect and do. And this is a conversation about sex. Now, it's a sex-positive conversation. I'll let you know up front, there's nothing extremely graphic and there's no discussion of anything non-consensual or SA. But we understand and respect that there are some people who, for whatever reason, just aren't in a space or really have an inclination to want to listen to that. That if this conversation isn't necessarily one for you, that's completely okay. But we also think this is a really important conversation to have. Within that, there's also the brief discussion of a anecdote of an experience that Dion has had where someone uses a slur. Now, we had the decision there to either air the slur in its full context and respect the way that Dion wants to speak about his experiences and the way that's right for him, or we can bleep it. Now, we're very aware that this slur is a reclaimed one for many people, and for others it is not. We've decided editorially to let Dion's words speak for themselves and to not bleep the slur because we respect that it is reclaimed for some and it's not reclaimed for others, and it's also, we think, just fair and important context. But we also want to give a heads up on that as well, just so that people are aware and it doesn't come as a shock to them. Anyway, let's get into it.
If you want to skip this section, head to 1 hour 35 minutes and we'll see you at the end.
Hello, so I am here with you to talk about some cool stuff. Do you want to tell the people who you are and what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I'm Dion Nolan. I'm a bi-trans guy based in England, and I've written a sex ed zine for trans guys and our partners, and that's mainly what I'm here to talk about today.
I guess let's start from the ground here. What made you want to get into zines?
Well, I've always thought they're really cool. They're just a medium for underground culture and alternative thought, and they're also just so much easier to write than a book. One day I'd like to write books. That's such an intimidating thing. I was like, if I get a zine off the ground, then I can feel like I'm a real writer and eventually kind of build up to bigger things. Two of the zines that I've read and really liked are, there's one called Queer Fire, which is about prison resistance in America, queer prison resistance. And another one, which is just about how to get away with not paying for train tickets.
Love that. No, I actually love that. So yeah, what made you want to get into this particular topic then?
It's just really hard to find sex ed information for trans guys. I'm lucky that the sexual health clinic near me is quite trans inclusive, but that's not the case everywhere. That's because I live in a big city. And things online, like you are seeing more websites now that like provide health information that are trying to be more trans inclusive, and so they'll use words like assigned female at birth or whatever. But often they haven't actually thought about like what like trans bodies actually need. They've just kind of thrown in as like a word to try and be like woke or inclusive or whatever, and they've not thought about it any deeper than that. So like sometimes, say like on testosterone, like the clit behaves much more like a dick, right? And I would call it a dick, and a lot of trans guys do because like it just physically that is what it's much more like. But if they're just kind of swapping those words, like, okay, maybe you're now including some trans guys who aren't on testosterone with that language, but actually you're not considering like most of us in our needs. So yeah, I guess I was just trying to fill that gap of like all that information.
It's one of the things that like I think is very easily overlooked because we're normally so busy focusing on trying to just fight to get access to the healthcare. The whole extra level of like information and knowledge that's needed for then like continuing on after you get that care and you continue with that body is like a whole other thing. Like with it being a guide that like contains a lot of this like really often hard to find information and stuff, how did you approach writing for like a wider audience? Because like as you said, zines are often quite focused on small underground like communities and subcultures and stuff. So yeah, how did you tackle writing for an audience that might have varying levels of understanding of our community?
Part of the inspiration for this like comes into this because like I just have so many conversations with like cis guys who've never had sex with a trans guy before, from Grindr or in bars or whatever. And at a certain point, I was like, maybe it'd be easier if I just wrote a thing about this and distributed it in the bars and didn't have to have this conversation.
No, that's smart.
I'd also read Fucking Trans Women, that zine that has been around for ages. Probably a lot of people have heard of it already. And I was like, why don't I make one of those? One of the reasons I write is because I see a lot of trans guys, like particularly newly transitioned younger trans guys online, just being really stressed out about everything and kind of thinking that no one will like them or no one will want to have sex with them or no one will want to date them or whatever because they're trans, and like being really uncomfortable with their bodies. And like that just makes me sad because like I get that, like I was there like not so long ago, but I've managed to like push through it and like actually figure out that like you can have loads of fun and loads of people are into you, and there are occasionally people who aren't, but that's fine. Like, you know, everyone's got their preferences. So I guess it was about like trying to reduce the fear that there is on both sides. Like cis people are often like quite awkward and anxious about approaching trans people because they're like, the idea of us in the media is that we're so oversensitive, right? And that we make this big deal of like you're a morally bad person if you use the wrong word.
Yeah.
Right? And most people are just trying to like say the right thing, but like they don't really know what to say. So I think a big part of how I wrote it was to try and approach cis people as like coming to it in good faith, and just like not understanding. And so like I defined all the words I use like on the back. It's really hard to find space for everything in it, but I managed to like define like there's even a table of like this is a slur, because I've literally had like some lovely cis guy in a bar who was being friendly to me refer to like a trans night that happened locally as tranny night, and he just didn't understand that like that's not really appropriate. And I just let it in the moment because I was like, I really can't be asked right now. I'm trying to have a fun night out.
Yeah.
Including that was like, that came out of a real experience. And even like defining cisgender, like a lot of people don't know what that means. So I tried to make it like as accessible as possible for like literally the most ignorant person. Because like I say, like so many of them are coming at it with good intentions, but they're just hurting people because they don't mean to. Like I tried to include information that trans guys would find really useful, even if like they potentially have quite a bit of sexual experience or like quite a bit of sexual knowledge. The stuff about like post-op penises, I didn't even know any of that. I had to go and find people in Facebook groups online that like had those operations and like talk to them about it and like find all of that through talking to several different people who'd had the same like different operations. So the idea was to be as useful as possible to as many people as possible.
No, I mean that makes a lot of sense. Like, because I can understand that guy might have genuinely just been around enough trans people, because many of us do use that word, reclaimed and whatever, and just gotten a bit too comfortable or not realize that there's like boundaries there. And like
he's also an older guy, and language has changed over time. So I think that's why in that table where I put like, this is a slur, don't ever use it, I also put there's a grey area. Like I put like T-boy, like pussy boy, like there's loads of words that some of us think are kind of fun and use for ourselves, and we'll name our club nights that, or we'll wear like trans merch that has that on it or whatever, but we might not be comfortable with cis people using them, and some of us might have really horrible experiences with cis people using them in a derogatory way, and we like really don't want cis people to use them. So yeah, I was trying to acknowledge that there is that grey area as well, and then gave them like safe, you can always call us trans guy, trans person, whatever.
One of the most like insightful things that I found reading through the zine was actually that double page spread on the anatomies that trans men and masculine people might have, in part because it was whilst it's helpful for people who aren't in our community to better understand, it also actually kind of acted a bit like a here's your options of transition for me, someone who is in the community. So how did you tackle like that specific area of the zine?
So I kind of mentioned already that I literally had to go and find people with these operations, and that wasn't like particularly simple to do. I happened to have met an older trans guy in a bar once who'd had phalloplasty, and he's the only trans guy I've met ever in my life who's had phalloplasty. So I messaged him. Luckily, I'd got his Instagram when I met him, and just asked if he'd be happy to talk about it, and luckily he was. So yeah, I kind of went out of my way to go and find those people. And I did that, and I wanted to make sure that I included that, because I think so many people see phalloplasty and even metoidoplasty, even though it's a little bit more accessible, as just completely impossible, that it's like not even worth thinking about, because the wait list is so long in this country, and it's not easy to access in other countries either, or it's absurdly expensive if you go private. And I think there's also a lot of like bad talking about it within the community, like maybe partly because people think, well, it's so inaccessible. They kind of comfort themselves by saying, well, it's not that good anyway, so it's fine. But like I read this book recently about it was like different account. It was called Hung Jury for anyone who's interested. It was just a bunch of accounts of guys who've had phalloplasty. And yeah, some of them did have quite difficult complications, and the recovery was quite long. But every single one like said it was utterly worth it, and that it had like really made them feel like during sex, like the intimacy that they were able to have with their partners, and like the kind of removal of that discomfort that they'd previously felt with bottom dysphoria, but also just sort of going about their life like feeling like balls against your leg when you're sitting on like the train or whatever, like that just felt right, like that kind of thing. So yeah, I wanted to make sure that I included that, and that it wasn't like done in a way that would in any way make people think that those surgeries aren't worth having if they're something you want, because that's just something that I'd like realized was actually really prevalent. And then with TDIC, like I had some feedback actually from someone who read it recently, who said that they'd previously just kind of thought they were asexual, but like having, and obviously that's fine for people who actually are asexual, like not shitting on that at all. But they said that like reading the zine and like seeing the way I talked about TDIC as I did had made them think actually maybe they did want to experiment sexually, because like that enabled them to see it in a way that like they could kind of accept it more and be able to enjoy it more, and like it felt more like like a part of their body that they could enjoy. And so I'm like really glad to have that feedback. Like that was completely my intention.
It's beautiful when you get that kind of response from people that kind of shows you that you've hit the mark, right?
Yeah,
and that you've been able to express the idea in a way that is giving good effects on people that even you hadn't anticipated. Speaking on like the stuff that's in the zine, because they are infamously short, and you've already mentioned like it's a struggle for space. What's some stuff that you would have liked to have included but like didn't make it?
The page on consent, I think you could kind of write zines and zines about consent. It was really hard to think like, okay, what would be relevant to most people? The fetishization part, I think some people will disagree with me on that, like, but I was willing to kind of put my position. Because essentially, I think that it's fine to have any preferences, like whether you have a preference for trans people or a preference against trans people, like that's a like morally neutral thing. Like all of us have weird brains, like people like dressing up as animals, like people like all sorts of weird stuff, right? And that's fine. It's morally neutral. What matters is how you treat people, and if you treat people with respect,
Yeah.
then that's kind of just from me coming from like a very kink positive politics. But then like it's how you express it, right? So the point that I made there was like, yeah, some trans guys are going to be into being bottoms and like being really objectified as bottoms, and just find that trans guy. If if you're really into pussy, like just go and do that. But some trans guys are going to be like horribly dysphoric from that, and are going to tell you to fuck off. So just don't talk to them if that's what you want, right? Like, yeah, it doesn't have to be like so like morally loaded. All of our preferences, like we can just take that all that stress out of it and be like, okay, let's just find people who are into what we're into. There's some observations I've had because I used to be a lesbian, and then now I'm like, I am bi, but I'm like primarily in gay male spaces and primarily interested in men. And like the cultural change going between like those two communities and like how they approach sex and consent was absolutely massive. And I think like we need to kind of have more, maybe I'll write about it more in the future, but I'd love to have other people's input as well. I don't think like necessarily just my insights are like the whole picture. But like I think there's just very different models of consent that are used. I think for lesbians there's much more of a like verbal yes means yes thing where you like need a lot more like affirmation for like every step. Whereas for gay men, there's much more just like trust that the other person will walk off or say no if they need to, and which allows a lot more like forwardness, which I really enjoy and it works for like gay male cruising culture. But there's pros and cons of both, and different people are more comfortable with each type or somewhere in the middle. Yeah, I could have written so much more about consent, but yeah, just didn't have the space. On anatomy, I didn't really talk about holes beyond what holes you might have. There's a really cool study that shows that a bunch of trans guys in their vaginas, like the tissue turned into prostate tissue on like after several years on testosterone. Yeah. So like, yeah, we don't technically have prostates, right? So like doing anal with a trans guy isn't going to be exactly the same, but some of that vaginal tissue turns into prostate tissue. So the sensation must be pretty similar if a trans guy still has his vagina. But even in the UK, with the way that they do phalloplasty, they kind of seal the vagina. I think they like, what's the word, cauterize it. So the vagina is still there internally. So that if that's turned into prostate tissue, it's still there. And sort of anecdotally, from what I've read, anal is good because of that after phalloplasty. So yeah, there's just so many little things like that I would have loved to include, but there was no space.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and I'd not heard that before, and that's kind of blown my mind a little bit, because I'm like, oh, but it makes sense, but you just kind of, you never really consider it. How would you then encourage anyone who's like currently listening to this, who like wants to make a zine or has an idea and now is like, oh, maybe this is the medium, like how would you encourage them to get into it?
Don't try and like find perfection. Just like think about your experiences and what like interesting thoughts and experiences you've had that someone wants to hear. Like it doesn't have to be everyone, like it is just for a subculture. If any of you've read Fucking Trans Women, that's not really trying to be an encyclopedia. Like it's very much like this one woman saying, look, these are the things I've learned about how to have sex without dysphoria as a trans woman and how I want my partners to like treat my body. In it, she calls for other people to send in submissions, and I don't know if that ever actually happened. I'd love to see if there were any follow-ups. But that's a great way of framing it, because then she's not she's not trying to, be everyone and say everything, which I think I was trying to do that a bit more. And I'm sure I've missed out some things, but I did also send it like 20 different guys to like check it and like implemented a lot of their feedback. But yeah, like it can just be very personal, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be objective truth. It doesn't have to be world changing, but it might mean something to someone, and that's important.
Yeah, like I recently saw at a little Pride thing, I saw one of the stalls there. I think they're a stall called Bat Makes, and they had some zines for sale, and one of them was I think titled "What My Brain Fog Feels Like," which is a very personal thing, and it's not a guide as far as I could see, but for people of how to handle it. It's just I'm feeling the need to express some of this, and here's how I would like to communicate this.
And I'm sure that made someone out there feel less alone in like how they feel.
Yeah, exactly. What are you focusing on next then in writing? Like, is it more zines, or feel free to plug whatever, or tell us where your brain's at with interesting ideas, creative stuff. Go off.
Yeah, I've kind of got 2 zine ideas in the works right now. I don't know how long they'll take, or if they'll morph, before they actually get published into something else. But one of them is cruising while trans. I really want to write about that, kind of to balance out. Like, I feel like with the zine, I've kind of said to cis people, you need to like do this whole education thing before you can have sex with us. But in reality, like, I'll cruise a guy and like say about 3 sentences, and like that's enough. Like, I'll say, "Oh yeah, that's my dick. Suck it like you'd suck a dick," and he'll go, "Okay," and then that's that. Like, it doesn't have to be as complicated. So I was kind of thinking maybe some like little comic panels or something of different cruising stuff, just to show people that it doesn't have to be that difficult. And also, like, cruising can be quite funny sometimes. Like, if you're in a dark room, you can't actually see anyone. Like, you're just sucking dicks, and like, I don't know. There's so many things I was thinking about.
I know what I know what you mean. Like,
They're so anonymous. That's kind of perfect for trans people who are insecure, right? Like, go up to a glory hole, like, suck a dick, and like, he's probably going to call you a good boy, and you don't have to like worry about, if he can see your chest and stuff. Like, I think as much as cruising can be quite scary for trans people, and there is like a legitimate cause for that as well, and like, you should take basic safety precautions.
Yeah,
it's very freeing as well. So yeah, that's one is. The other one is like kind of similar, I guess. It's also along the lines of like trying to show people how freeing and like creative sex can be. The idea for the title is creative sex, but that could change. But I was just kind of thinking of, again, maybe some kind of comic panels or something of like just ways that sex can be different. Like I think a lot of trans guys worry that cis people they hook up with won't think that their dicks are as good, right? Because they're plastic or whatever. But like, if you ever hooked up with an older guy who's got erectile dysfunction, you'll realize that actually it's like an inherent male fearing that your dick's not good. Like, you're not different to other men because you're scared that your dick's not good enough. Like, that's probably the most like common thing that men have, right? But it also doesn't have to be. You can have a great time with your hands in your mouth, all that sort of thing, and like how you can get around dysphoria. Like, you don't have to take all your clothes off during sex. Like, you could just be in leather like the whole time. Like, there's so many options. Yeah, so all that sort of thing.
That's really cool. And yeah, whenever you have anything else come up, feel free to send it to us. And we'll make sure about putting it out there. We'll have links to Hung Jury and the link tree to your stuff in the description for this episode. And people out there, if anyone wants to make zines, go fucking do it.
And also, like, I want to encourage people to get in touch with me if they want to, because like, I have only just started my Instagram account. I'm not absolutely swamped with messages, like, and I'm very up for hearing what people want to hear. Like if there are like younger trans guys who like want more content like this, or if there's like older trans guys who like want to contribute to a zine. Like, if the cruising one is just my experiences, it's not going to be that long. But I'd love to like have other people's stories in there as well. So yeah, absolutely reach out. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So yeah, if anyone has any ideas or submissions, send them in. And yeah, thank you for coming on here and talking about this.
Just to throw a last point in there. I do want to write about politics eventually, like particularly like the oppression of trans men, because I think a lot of our general discussion of transphobia often kind of treats trans men as an afterthought, or often just completely excludes us. So I have a lot on that I want to write about. I'm going to do that under a different pen name that I'll eventually create accounts for and stuff. But I did want to do that under this one because I wanted this to be kind of just fun stuff, like the world is ending, but like we can just have some fun sometimes. Like, you know. So also, yeah, like you say, like with all the healthcare stuff, like all that discourse around that is often like, how can we get hormones? How can we survive? But I'm wanting to help people to like actually enjoy the bodies they have with those limitations and get around the dysphoric parts that they still might have. And just have a good time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, a part of survival is finding joy and pleasure, and normally we think about that in more wholesome ways, but maybe we can think about it in other wholesome ways. So, you know. If you want to read the book Hung Jury, we have linked that below, as we have also done so with the research paper that he mentioned. And if you want to hear more and learn more, then check out the articles linked below by the LGBT cultural heritage, or the article Fanzine, the queer history of the zine culture. And if you want to see older examples yourself, then there are whole archives, such as the Queer Zine Archive Project, and Lavender Zines. The links to both of those also available. So yeah, this was really cool and exciting. Honestly, I learned some things from Dion Zine, which I think just goes to show how hard that knowledge can be to come by. And yeah, it was groovy to use this space to talk about trans masculinity, trans men, sex, and, you know, just a lot of that. It's a conversation that I've only really seen happen when it comes to transition and how to get hormones and stuff. Anyway, yeah.
So full disclosure, dear listener, this interview took place a little bit earlier on today, so I haven't been able to listen to it.
Yeah.
So I can say, oh, well, we talked about this and that and the other, but I don't know. I don't know what was said in the interview. For all I know, they swapped good recipes for some nice breads. I'm guessing
or
not.
Some good recipes for breeding. No, stop.
So I'm glad you got something out of this interview, because that's kind of why we're here, really. Yes, it's to keep people informed, but we also kind of want to get some knowledge out of it ourselves. And I think being able to say, okay, that was awesome, that was really worthwhile conversation to have, and it was something a bit different, fan-fucking-tastic. So nice work, Flint.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, well, honestly, thank you to Dion for reaching out to us. Obviously, we'll have as I've said in the interview, we have all of the links available for Dion there as well. He said feel free to get in touch if you have questions or you have ideas for submissions or things like that. But yeah, he reached out to us saying, hey, I've made this zine on this topic, and, you know, if you want to boost it, that would be amazing. And I'd be happy to talk on the pod if you're okay with that. And I was like, yes, let's. Like, that's sick. Thank you for reaching out. Cool. So honestly, thank you to Dion. And if anyone else has any things that matter to them that are, you know, things like this, like these cultural queer gems and pockets of history and action and culture and whatnot, let us know. We want to do more of this. We want to have more conversations that center trans people, as opposed to conversations like what a lot of the other rest of the pod is. Of course, that's very important. It's very vital. We're never going to just be like, no news. We're never doing news. None of it matters, because that's not the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's nice to turn the mirror inward.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's time for some trans joy.
Yes, let's keep it going. Trans joy.
Yeah, baby. All right, I'll get started off with the appropriately named Samantha Joy. Trans joy. My boobs have grown to the point where they hurt when they go down the stairs, which, yeah, that's a mood. Not that I've used stairs for quite a long time. But anyway, trans pain, my boobs now hurt whenever I go down the stairs. Sports bra time.
Yeah, big relate when that started to happen with me. Wasn't quite so affirming though, but I'm glad that it's happening. I'm glad that you're enjoying having that. That's great and groovy.
For sure.
Also, Lucy G, trans joy, I've dropped a dress size, trans pain, still no GnRH blocker.
It'll come.
Hopefully you get that soon, and I'm glad that at least that you're feeling better and happier in your body, even if there's, still the things with medical care to get figured out.
Yeah. And Freya says, trans joy, 4 years HRT, finally understanding some things about myself as a consequence. And yes, it takes some time, but
yeah,
I remember that. I remember being like 3 or 4 years into it and going, wow, that's a very different reaction to how I would have reacted to that thing years ago. Wow. So my boobs are growing, my lips are softer, and my brain is reorganizing itself. What a joy! Which, yeah.
And also, on the point of HRT, Lucy G's Trans Joy Part 2 is 19 months on HRT, and I think I'm comfortable showing emotions at last, which, fantastic!
Yeah.
Love that! Fucking A!
Hell yeah. So Molly Kitsune Toru says, moved to a new GP and they've immediately kept up my estrogen prescription without any faffing about it or really any questions. Which, good. That's what's supposed to happen.
It's what's supposed to happen, and I'm glad that it has. Charlotte says, got my first pair of light clothes since transitioning so that I can look more butch and a heck of a lot more confidence from that, which is fantastic. We'd love to see it. Good for you.
Crack Zeno says, have a GP appointment in like an hour with someone who is actually chill and not weird towards me. Said to just mention her name if I was struggling to get blood tests booked at the place. So that's cool, I guess. And yes, it is. That's very cool.
Morwen says, had a good session with my therapist about looking up, and looking forward, I have rock climbing later this evening. Oh, and my first haircut since coming out tomorrow evening. Nice!
Yeah, hope it goes well. Speaking of things that I hope go well, Kit says, I've got my pre-op for top surgery. Yeah, at long last. The surgery to make you into a top. That's how that works, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. It's exactly how it works. So Tegan says, I got my new NHS number at the GP, mainly because a lovely person in the admin team made it their personal project and didn't let anyone put them off. We love an ally in STEM.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, we do. Maxalot says, Trans Joy, a little late on posting this, but I got married at the end of April. Me and my now wife had a small ceremony with some friends at the Glasgow Botanical Gardens, and honestly, it was the best day of our lives. Maxalot also enclosed a picture with that, and it's just fucking beautiful. I love a good picture of a queer wedding, but it just looks amazing.
And like the location looks gorgeous. They look so happy and in love. And honestly, the attire that they chose for the day.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So good.
Stylish.
Very rarely do I see a wedding dress and I'm like, oh, that's fucking gorgeous. And that wedding dress, so cool, so unique. Love it so much. And Christina says, I got my second year accommodation sorted and the landlord was quite patient as I had to change my name, thankfully. Good, glad, wonderful.
Yeah. Sasha, they said, I think I finally sorted housing for like next month. Like I've got a contract now, just need to sign it. Yeah, it's all coming together.
Yes. Halsey says, I had a haircut today.
Classic.
Groovy.
Samantha Duke says, my 6-week-old vagina is healing. I'm so back on hormones, the hot flashes have stopped, and I'm feeling like myself again.
Love that.
Good. Good for you, Samantha.
Lauren says, pierced my ears the other week and still feel great about it. Absolutely. That new piercing high, it's so real. It's so real. Sometimes I get a piercing and I step out and I'm like, yeah, but I could just go back in.
I know what you mean, but whenever someone says, oh, I pierced my ears, it always makes me think they pierced their own ears with like some kind of needle and just jammed it through the bottom of the earlobe, which might be what happened, but equally it's more likely that it was I paid somebody else to pierce my ears for me. Anyway, so Robin Rocks says, chest is 36C after 4 years on estrogen, and it's awesome. As someone who recently made it to 38D, hell yes it is.
Nice. Hell yes. We love that. We love that.
Yeah.
Tony Woodmost says 3 years and 6 months on estradiol, and since February I have gone from A cup to at least C cup in a sudden growth spurt. Nice one.
This can happen. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Taco Wasa says, almost finished my next charity knife, and this is another one where they've included a picture, and it's a really fucking cool looking knife.
Yeah, it looks really fucking radical, like...
Taco Wasa apparently just makes knives, which is cool as fuck. That is the best hobby.
Yeah. M says, quitting my job and starting a queer CIC, plus finally have my first endocrinology appointment in a few weeks' time. Yes!
Yeah,
love this.
progress.
Love to hear this. Please let us know what the queer CIC is and what you get up to. Keep us informed if we can help out anyway with signal boosting,
yeah.
whatever. Then yeah, by all means, get in touch.
Jay Woods says, Transjoy properly setting up a local trans charity. Did a sold-out fundraiser poetry slam the other day. And now also hosting a cabaret on the 13th of July in London, Queertopia Cabaret, to raise more money for trans rights. Fucking wonderful.
Amazing. If you do not have tickets yet to Queertopia Cabaret, then do so, because fuck yeah. And also, same goes to you with the local trans charity. Feel free to get in touch and we'll see how we can help with anything, even if it's just signal boosting on stories and whatnot. Jay is just a busy bee.
Absolutely.
And finally, Myokcho says, it'll be 6 years on HRT next week for me. Congratulations. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's wonderful. Honestly, every time I finish reading these out, I always feel just a little bit lighter in the foot and happier in the heart. Like,
yeah.
Oh,
no, right with
you. Yeah. So that's everything. We've done it all. We've finished it. This episode of What the Trans was produced and presented by Flint and Ashleigh. It was written by Sammy, Flint, Ashleigh and Alyx. It was edited by Amber Roberts and Amber Devereaux. Our opening theme music was composed by Waratsawa Yui Kolberg, our episode thumbnail artwork was created by Upo Appears, and transcription performed by Sam Wyman, Roman B., Rachel Aldred, and Georgia Griffiths. We would especially like to thank our producer-level Patreons, who are Willow Tree,
Kate Cox,
Levi Hart,
Zoe B.,
Michael Jarjo,
Danielle Hardwick,
Ossian,
Heather Patterson,
Brianna Neal,
Toby,
Gorstar,
Susan K. Quinn,
Undead Narfa,
Ellie,
Bex the Mermaid,
Brian Goss,
Hazel Dust,
Laura, Queen of Seagulls,
Becky Cheetle,
Jordan Starr,
Lee Downs,
Lindsay Cannon,
George Simmons,
Carly Silvers,
B Squared,
Smiley, friend of Candy from across the pond.
Okay, so Amber's Amber D, I know that you've got that little tin can, literally the tin can mic thing. I suggest, if possible, I would love to have like some old gramophone-y effect over this one with like some kind of, proper 1920s vibe. So,
the Socialist Party of Great Britain, 1904.
Sarah,
Eris,
Tin Roof,
Naystrom,
Lex Phoenix,
a hilarious joke from a podcast that you don't listen to,
Andrea Brooks,
Jack Edwards,
Dulcie,
Orion Matrix,
Now Art,
Needles and Threads,
Flaming Daphne,
Dr. McGee,
Jen,
Katie Reynolds,
Georgia Holden Burnett,
Grabalicious,
Mux Afon,
Root -1,
Gray,
Beth Anderson,
Bernice Roust,
Ellen Meller,
Jay Hoskins,
Trowan,
Ashleigh,
Setcab,
Jane,
Roberto de Prunk,
Rose Absolute,
Sarah,
Cena,
Kiki T,
D,
Sky Kalayan,
Eric Widman.
B.
Jude.
Monsieur Squirrel.
Fergus Evans.
Anubis a Jackal.
Brandon Craig.
Break the system.
Sean Phillips.
Heidi Reardon.
Lentil.
Clara Volume.
Amelia.
Samantha Raven.
Tabitha Joe Cox, aka Candy.
Fiona MacDonald.
Murgatroyd.
Ontologically unjust.
Stella.
Cinder Goza.
Rebecca Prentice.
Are you ready?
EA Games.
Crazy Richard.
Dan Oblivion.
Helen _
Ellie Gray.
Melody Nix.
Fiona Punchard.
John.
CB Bailey.
Gordon Cameron.
Ted Delphos.
Kai Lewin.
Vic Parsons.
Patreon user.
Vic Kelly.
Catherine.
Sabrina McVeigh.
Cassius Adair.
Melissa Brooks.
Karakan 12.
April Heller.
Sophie Lewis.
Alexandra Lilly.
Claire Scott.
Ariadne Pena.
Bernard's Pink Jelly Bean.
Excuse me, Lauren O'Nions.
Oh, my bad. Lauren O'Nions.
Bernard's Pink Jelly Bean.
And Lanos. Thank you
Thank
all,
you.
wonderful humans and people, and anyone who happens to not be a human. Groovy. Thank you too.
Toodaloo.
Bye.